Alien Buddha's House of Horrors #8. This is a story by N.J. Gallegos. The Call Shift. Exhaustion weighed me down, insidious, barely perceptible until it suffused all parts of me. It was a cancer entrenched in my bone marrow, proliferating wildly until it reached each and every cell. My hands trembled, fingers clumsy, and I nearly dropped the coffee cup the cute barista handed me. Great. That's what people like to see in a doctor. A fucking butterfingers. Here's your red-eye coffee. Flashing me a smile, her eyes lingered on mine a beat too long. The one benefit of them being so bloodshot, it brought out my natural hazel hues. Made them pop. I put an extra shot in there for you. You look like you need it. She didn't say it unkindly. You didn't have to be an ophthalmologist to notice the bags under my eyes. I tipped the cup to my lips, thankfully shaking less, and ignored my rapid heartbeat. Thanks, you're right, I shrugged and grinned sheepishly. It's been a rough call. She slid me a wrapped pastry, and her fingertips briefly touched, sending a pleasurable pins and needles sensation up my arm. Dessert on me. Get your blood sugar up and go save some lives, okay? A shit-eating grin spread across my face, my first real bout of happiness the entire shift. Thank you. She tipped me a wink and moved on to the next customer. I made my way to the elevator slowly, partially from fatigue. 24 hours without sleep did that to a person, but mostly because I wanted to savor every second spent off the unit. My brain ached. How could it not? All those screeching alarms heralding impending death, making split decisions with minimal information, compounded by adding 5 patient deaths to today's tally. Despite medical advancements, novel pharmaceuticals, and top-notch staff, we couldn't halt the inevitable march of death. But I sought solace in a thought, finding threadbare comfort within it. At least none turned. An alarm blared overhead, and a Pavlovian response overtook me. My jaw clenched, my anxiety ramped up. Cold fear moistened my brow. Not again. Code blue, MedSurge 4013. Code blue, MediSurge 4013. Shit, I muttered. The pager clipped to my waist, buzzed unnecessarily with the same info, and I acknowledged the message into silence. Slugged back the coffee, wincing at the residual scorched tongue, then secreted the gifted pastry in one of my white coat's many pockets. My tennis shoes gobbled up linoleum, and my scrub swished as I dashed up the stairs. 1, 2, 3 flights. Couldn't trust the elevator. Took too long. Seconds were often a deciding factor in life versus death. And a fate even worse than that. I skidded to a stop in front of 4013 and sucked in a lungful of stale hospital air, finding it faintly familiar, canned with a tinge of urine and antiseptic. What do we got? I yelled, raising my voice over the clinical cacophony. A red-faced tech pumped up and down on the patient's chest roughly 100 times a minute. Deep, but not too fast. Maybe to the beat of the Bee Gees Staying Alive. Could also use Another One Bites the Dust by Queen, but I personally feared the bad juju it invoked. Nurses flitted about the room, drawing up meds, fussing with IVs and slapping sticky, fast patches on the patient's torso. Arms blared, creating a medical symphony of beeps. A stern nurse clutching a clipboard, the code recorder. raked her eyes over me, regarded me with utmost scrutiny, sized me up. Would I be a fucking idiot? She didn't know me. Nurses had to assume residents were imbeciles until proven otherwise. Otherwise, people might die. Anxiety tightened my shoulders, but I didn't dare drop my eyes from hers. Had to seem confident, capable, super smart. She nodded as if satisfied with the bags under my eyes, and how fatigue filled the fine wrinkles of my face, and my general rumpled appearance. Went into VTOC 3 minutes ago. Already I gave 1 milligram of EPI and a shock. Her lips pursed. No response. She glanced down at the clipboard. Post-op from cholecystectomy. Were they? I started, but she anticipated the question. Had it in 2020. Fear prickled at the back of my neck. The nurse yelled, "Time for a pulse check!" Sweat-soaked tech stopped compressions and switched out with a medical student. She appeared ecstatic to be participating in real patient care with an undercurrent of pure terror residing just below the surface. Probably green, not yet used to the grim realities of the post-pandemic world we resided in. The wide-eyed student stood on the stool, arms poised to resume on my say-so. All eyes studied the cardiac monitor, still VTOC. And I slid a gloved hand in the dead woman's rapidly cooling groin, feeling for a pulse. Nothing. Resume compressions, I said to the med student. They rushed to comply, reminding me of an over-caffeinated jackrabbit. Not so fast, I cautioned. They adjusted their speed accordingly, slowly from a blur to a well-oiled machine, timed perfectly with Kendrick Lamar's Not Like Us, playing in my brain. A keeping CPR tempo favorite of mine. Better. I directed my attention to the nurse at the crash cart, noting their badge reel of a cartoon dumpster fire. Good sense of humor was a must for healthcare. My motto, if you're not laughing, you're crying. Charge to 300 joules. His fingers flashed in the machine and dropped 300 milligrams of amiodarone, I instructed. A pretty nurse with blonde hair, pulled into a tight braid, grabbed the vial, popped the top off, and pierced it with a needle. The dumpster fire nurse called out, "Charge to 300 joules." "Everyone clear," I sternly boomed, eagle-eyeing everyone near the bedside. The last thing I needed was another dead person courtesy of an errant defibrillation. Satisfied, I signaled and said, "Shock!" The patient, a woman, her skin a dangerous shade of gray seen only in death, twitched. Electricity blasted through her, hopefully jump-starting the heart into normal rhythm. "Resume compressions!" Another full 3 minutes of CPR revealed the sad truth. Still dead. Continued VTOC, but still had a chance. The code stretched on. More epi, lidocaine, shock, bicarb and calcium chloride pushes. Tossed the kitchen sink at her. Another shock. VTOC became PEA, an unshockable rhythm. Epi, pulse check, nothing. Resume. She had a downtime of 30 minutes, a prolonged time for a brain starved of oxygen. Before the pandemic, I would have called it. Mindful death was better than being a vegetable relegated to a life in a vent farm, fighting off not so comical infections from infrequent hospitalizations. Post-pandemic, DNRs barely existed. For those who contracted the virus and recovered, irrevocably changed. Not that we knew it then. The virus lingered in the brain primarily, sort of like herpes zoster did with shingles, except instead of a painful blistered rash, chaos. Absolute mayhem. Islands of infected cells hid in plain sight, scattered throughout the lymphatic and circulatory systems. They reactivated somehow in the face of profound hypoxia, coaxed back to life. During the nasty process of death, the virus came back online in a very terrifying way. 80% of the population contracted the infection in 2020, and now prolonged resuscitations were the norm. Vegetation was preferable to the alternative. Asystole now, flatline. Despair hung heavy in the room, yet I couldn't bring myself to call it. Another dose of epi, I called out. Chunks of hair now hung from her braid. But the perspiring nurse wearily complied. Resume compressions. Doctor, the code recorder's clipboard bobbed. It's been nearly an hour. We're not going to get them back. But, grasping my shoulder gently, she pointed. Look. I did, and spied what I desperately didn't want to see. Veins engorging with deoxygenated blood. Black, crisscrossing, otherwise porcelain skin. If I were to peel back an eyelid, a dangerous proposition which would place me far closer to the mouth than I cared to be, I'd see blood-red sclera and inert pupils. Their irises didn't tinge yellow until later. Tension tightened the nurse's face, and she squeezed my shoulder firmly. We only have minutes before. Stop, I bellowed. The room froze, and everyone wore identical expressions of dread, knowing what came next. Only the medical student wriggled with anticipation, an excited puppy in blue scrubs and a short white coat. Sweat dampened her ponytail and red flushed her cheeks. Probably her first code. She'd only read about what came next. Maybe watched a dramatization of some medical show that glamorized doctors fucking in the call rooms. What a joke. I hadn't had sex in months. I checked my watch. Time of death, 0303. I reached into the left pocket of my white coat, my hand brushing against cool metal. Not that, not now. Too dangerous. Totally unnecessary. My just-in-case tool. I used it exactly one time, and I spent the post-shift shower rocking back and forth, unable to stop the macabre scene from replaying in my head. I still had nightmares about it. A young kid, afflicted with cancer. He came back with a vengeance, quicker than a rattlesnake. Thankfully, all the drilling and time spent in the sim lab was worth it. No other casualties, only the kid who was no longer a kid. Skipping past just in case, I gripped old reliable and pulled it free. Can I help? The medical student asked meekly. Bright hope shone from her face. Part of me wanted to say no, but she had to learn sometime. We all did. Have you ever done this before? She shook her head solemnly. I clutched the device in my right hand, sterile white in color, tipped with a pointed bolt. See this? I flicked off the safety. Make sure that's always on. You don't want to injure yourself during rounds. I've seen a first-year shoot his foot during my internal medicine rotation. Talk about an idiot. She nodded. Got it. I pointed. When you're ready, you squeeze this. Where do I put it? I let out a rueful laugh. Before I could answer her, a guttural groan interrupted, sending prickles down my back. I whirled and stared at the patient who thrashed against the hard restraints the nurses placed around the wrists and ankles sometimes during the marathon code. Believe it or not, ACLS now included this amongst its other steps after the first dose of epi. The reanimated eyes flashed wildly, rolling in their sockets. Teeth snapped and tendons grew taut in the neck as they strained. The students stared, their mouth agape. Different than you expected. She rasped and cleared her throat. It's more violent. I gave her a grim smile. I know, right? Gesturing to the tool I clutched, I gestured towards her. If she wasn't like this, I'd let you do it, but I shrugged. I think we better stick to the old adage. See one, do one, teach one. Watch closely. I stepped to the side of the bed about a foot away from the former patient and aimed. Sounds kind of obvious, but the skull's your target, the brain. They take a headshot or else. I trailed off, content to allow the student's imagination to run wild. Chunks of skin and sinew ripped from their body, or maybe getting her throat torn out with jagged teeth. The bottom line, you got to destroy the brain. Teeth clicked, and a black, bloated tongue let loose a shrill shriek. I squeezed, and the spring mechanism propelled the pointed bolt. Bones shattered and gave way to pink brain underneath. It was surprisingly bloodless, perfected over the years to minimize carnage. The bolt deployed its hooks and dug in, letting loose its devastating electric current, stopping all brain activity. A scream rose, and tonic colonic activity seized my former patient. After about a minute, all animation sagged from her features, and she stilled. No need for a double tap this time. I snuck a look at the student, and she looked near fainting. You all right? She hugged herself. I think so. It's just worse than I expected. Well, usually you bolt them before they turn, so it's less traumatic for everyone involved. Pink flushed her cheeks. Does it ever get easier? I considered. I guess it's just a part of life now. Did you practice before? Oh, I remembered before. Before the virus roared through the population. Before. When the dead stayed dead. The pathogen was a close cousin to rabies, except much worse. We were able to save most folks with supportive care, plasmapheresis, medically induced comas to ease their swelling brain. Some people had deficits after recovery, like they'd suffered a stroke or traumatic brain injury, but they lived rather full, productive lives. Something lingered in their bloodstream, taking root in the brain. When the inevitable occurred, death, something within the virus reactivated, reanimating the corpse. The brain became an undead queen bee, created honest-to-God zombies. Now the goal was life at all costs, and those who'd recovered from the virus. Do everything. Stop at nothing. When that failed, we were the last executioner, wielding tools initially used in the slaughter of cattle, now refined to create less mess and absolutely obliterate the brain. Every doctor and most nurses carried actual guns, too, as a last resort. Bullets tended to cause more damage, sometimes skipping around the skull, hitting someone else. Residency these days included hours spent at the firing range, 6 hours each week. I do, I answered, leaving it at that. Thank you, the student said. The corners of her mouth turned up. She was obviously shaken, but thrilled she'd witnessed a kill firsthand and hadn't tossed her cookies or fainted. You always remember your first, especially the first time you pulled the trigger. That one never left you. Sadly, I've lost count of how many I'd put down. You're welcome, I said, giving her as much of a smile as I could muster under the circumstances. My stomach grumbled, and I remembered my gifted pastry. My mouth watered. Drilling zombies didn't hurt my appetite none, not anymore. Leaving the room, I headed to the steel sink at the end of the hall, hiked up my sleeves, and lathered my forearms and hands liberally with soap. Scrubbed, rinsed, assuredly germ-free, I pulled the pastry from its sleeve, discovering a cherry and cream cheese Danish. I brought it to my mouth and took a bite. The rich sweetness made me swoon, and I closed my eyes, enjoying the simple pleasures of life. A paper fluttered from the wrapper, and I bent down to retrieve it. Hey, text me, smiling face. Beneath this, she scrawled her phone number. Unable to help myself, no chill to wait and play it cool, I keyed it in and sent her a thank you message. Hope your day is going better, she said. I sent back, living the dream, which in medical speak meant kill me now. I wondered if she'd ever caught the virus or if she'd been lucky enough to get the vaccine. Or would I have to worry about her dying one day, maybe next to me, in our shared bed, agony consuming me, knowing I'd have to put her down myself? Or could I just live my life, staying in the present? Life was a bitch, and then you died. If you were unlucky enough, you might come back. Want to go on a date with me? I asked, hoping to God she was actually a lesbian and not just wanting to be friends. Another code blue sounded, and I groaned. I'd rest when I was dead. I ran, pushing past visitors and exhausted medical professionals, only slowing when my phone buzzed. I'd love to, she replied. A pep in my step, I rejoiced. A free pastry resurrected my romantic life. I deployed the next intracranial bolt with a smile.